I'm Dr. Tricia Thompson. I am an integrative and functional medicine doctor here in Ocean City, Maryland. I practice in Maryland and in Delaware. I mostly see people in person, but since things have changed, we are doing virtual visits through secure Zoom that's HIPAA compliant. So if anybody out of the area would like to work with me, by all means, we can talk about that, okay? So tonight we're here to talk about the 6 overlooked causes of autoimmunity. Lots of people have autoimmune conditions. They're one of the fastest growing health problems in the country. And we're gonna look at what we can do to move the next slide forward. That would be a good start. What we can do to stop their progression and identify them early and prevent people from getting sick. So this is my biggest tenet. The doctor of the future is the patient. People know how to heal themselves. Ultimately, you're the only one who can affect your own outcome. Nobody else can do it for you. You've got the best technology in the world right here, and all your body knows to do is to heal itself. It doesn't know how to kill itself. I've heard a lot of doctors say that there's something wrong with your body, that your body's doing this or your body's doing that, and it's really not true. I believe the body is perfect. It's doing exactly what it needs to do based on the instructions we're giving it. And those instructions we're giving it are based on our thoughts and our programming. So remember that our programming happens when we are young, when we are between 0 and 7 years old. So what our thought processes are already in place when we are very, very young. Sorry, having a little slide difficulty here. So has anybody ever heard of the 80-20 rule? So the 80-20 rule is called the Pareto principle, and basically it means 20% of the effort gets you 80% of your results. I find this very true in wellness as well. The more we create wellness, the more we focus on that, the more opportunity we have to create results. So of all the people that signed up to be here tonight, I probably got actually better than 20%, maybe 40%, which is pretty darn good. And of you guys, only about 20% of you will take the next steps. The next steps to increase your wellness. And I hope that all of you are those people and we can move forward and I can help show you how to get there. So who here thinks that their body doesn't know what it's doing? Anybody? So I believe that our bodies do know what it's doing. And our body is trying to do the best thing all the time. For years, we've been told the wrong things, right? We were told that smoking won't hurt us. We were told eat margarine. We were told eat low fat. Problem is that those things that we were told that were wrong have resulted in 100 million diabetics with the low-fat diet. We were told cholesterol is bad for you. And now people with autoimmune disease are being told that their immune system is bad for them and that we're going to give you these drugs and that we're going to turn it off. This is not the crowning achievement of medicine, to turn off this magnificence in your body. We continue to assume that your body knows what it's doing and it's trying to do the right things with the messages that it's receiving. Your body has no ability to make mistakes. Your body's doing its best job, isn't it? It's not doing its worst job. Do you think it's doing its best job? I do. I do. We're going to talk about why.
What will your last 10 years look like? Will you be quick enough for a game of tag with your grandchild? Strong enough to embrace every moment? Will you grow old with vitality get old with disease. It's time to decide. The average Canadian will spend their last 10 years in sickness.
Wow. First time I saw that, I actually had tears streaming down my face. I was so overwhelmed by that message. I don't know if anybody has seen a message like that here in the United States, but that message to me says everything. Your last 10 years in infirmity? Wow, that's a long time. And that's an average, which means that some people spend 20 years or 30 years in infirmary. They're sick for a long time. And this is different than cancer. You know, cancers are horrible suffering for people. But when you have suffering from cancer, usually lasts a year, 2 years maybe, a couple of months for some people, which is tragic, but it's not the same sort of infirmary that you have for a long period of time. Same thing is true in underdeveloped countries. When people get sick, they're sick for weeks or months, not for years. So autoimmunity gives us this opportunity to talk about how to stop this infirmity so that we can get well now and not have this problem in the future. So this workshop will not change your life unless you do. And I believe that you can, and I believe that I have the tools to help you do that if you need them. So let me tell you a little bit about me. I am an integrative and functional medicine doctor. I finished integrative fellowship with Andrew Weil back in 2018. And this was a path that I was on for a long time. I'm an osteopath by training. I still do manual medicine. I believe that we can heal ourselves and that form follows function, which means our bodies have to be in the right frame of mind and the right physical state in order to create wellness. I practice emergency medicine and still do. I've been doing that for over 20 years now. And I continue to look every day at the things that are going to bring us to the next level, bring all of us to the next level, and not leave people behind. What I found in the emergency department and when I talked to people is that there was no physician out there telling them that they could heal themselves or that they could heal at all, that there was any possibility of improvement. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. These are my people. This is my son Tenley and my daughter Quinn. They're 14 and 17. And their programming is watching me do what I do every day. So hopefully I'm doing it right. And this is my tribe of friends and family, my puppies. This is Zoe and Holly. And that's a little bit about me. My personal practice is that I believe that there are no get healthy overnight schemes. There's no way to wave a magic wand and eliminate the last 20 years of illness for most people. But with some hard work and some changes in lifestyle and the right pathway, people can get better even if they've been sick for a very long time. Your results are based on your efforts and your compliance, and you have to have a realistic timeline. The timeline is super important, and this is not something we talk about very often in medicine. So, for example, if you were going to take a drive to somewhere, so you decided after all this COVID nightmare is over, you want to go to Miami, and you got your car, and you got your map, and you got your GPS, and the car's all fueled up, and you're ready to go, and you think, okay, it's going to take me like 2.5 hours to get to Miami. Well, you and I all know from Maryland, it takes 12 hours to get to Miami. So if you embark on this journey with an unrealistic timeline, 2.5 hours in, when you're barely into the south of Virginia, you're going to be really upset that you haven't made the progress that you intended to make. So healing journeys are the same way. And we need to really think about what our timeline is. and how long it's going to take, because your expectations will never be met if we don't have the right timeline. Most people who embark on a health journey fail, and they fail for a lot of reasons. The timeline might be the biggest one because they have an unrealistic expectation of how long it's going to take and what the steps are going to be to get there. So we'll talk about that. Don't forget, if you have any questions while I'm talking, write it down. And at the end, we will go through all of them, okay? So a couple other housekeeping things. Let's stay connected. Please go to Maryland Integrative Health on Facebook and follow us. I'm doing a lot of little videos and information, and our website is marylandintegrativehealth.com. If any of you got a link from a friend, which is very possible and completely okay, if you go to marylandintegrativehealth.com and register, then you'll be able to get all of the information I will send after this. Okay. Does anybody have any pressing questions right now, or are we good to go? Looking at everybody's faces with head shaking. Excellent. Thank you. Of the thumbs up. All right. So the last time you tried to go someplace, did you use your GPS? I know I did. I'm not that good with directions. Did you put in the exact address, or did you put in kind of where you thought you might want to go? You put in the exact address. And then the GPS said, well, where are you right now? And if you couldn't tell it, you had to share that information through your phone, right? So we need to know where we're starting. If we don't know where we're starting, we can't get a realistic roadmap, and we can't get to the goal. So what is your goal? What is your goal with your health? Is it to get out of pain? Might be, but that's kind of ambiguous. What does that mean? Do you say, oh, if I could just, lose 50 pounds, then I would have my goal met. Also, not big enough, not real enough. How can anybody help you if they don't know what your goal is? So the question that I like to ask you today is, can you ask somebody for directions if you don't know where you want to get? Can you ask a healer? Can you ask a therapist, a friend for help when you don't know where it is you want to get? The question that people find the hardest is, what would you do if you woke up tomorrow and didn't have this problem anymore? What would you do if you woke up and felt amazing? Can you write down a couple of things right now on a piece of paper? What would you do if you felt amazing tomorrow? How would your life change? Some people say, I just go back to living my life. Well, the problem with that is that life is what got you here. So if you go back to living the same life, you're going to end up back where you started. So something's going to have to change. And our brain works by deciding ahead of time and having a pathway and having a real goal. So we'll talk about goals and how to get there. Does anybody want to share? Put it in chat. What? It's okay. We'll get to it later. You don't have to share. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. So we're here to talk about autoimmunity. One of the things that's weird about autoimmunity is that people that have a autoimmune condition, one, are 50% more likely to have a second one. And some people have multiple autoimmune conditions. And a lot of the things that I keep hearing from people is, well, my doctor wants to put me on this cream for my rash, and they want me to put this medicine for my joint pain and something else for my thyroid disease. And they want to put me on this to lose weight. All of those systems that we're going to talk about are the same process. They're the same thing. All right, quickly, what does Maryland Integrative Health believe in? We don't diagnose or treat disease, we co-create health. Virtually all disease starts in the gut. Truly believe that. We look at the poop of pretty much every patient that we talk to, even if they don't think they have GI symptoms. Patient determines the outcome, not the clinician. I will help you get where you want to go, but I'm not the one who makes it happen. You do. We believe in the innate, inherent nature of our bodies to heal. We listen intently to get to the root cause of your condition. We don't just treat your symptoms. And we invest in your success and consider costs in everything we do for our treatment. At the end of this, I am going to send you a quick 4-question survey. Let me know how I did. I'm new to this webinar thing, and I'll try not to talk too fast because that's my biggest issue. So I'm talking too fast. I apologize. Put it in the chat. Tell me to slow down. And then if you get that survey back to me and schedule a 20-minute consultation in the next 48 hours, it doesn't have to be in the next 48 hours, but if you schedule it in the next 48 hours, we'll give you a 10% discount on any of our packages. And like I said, if you didn't register through the link, go to the Facebook page or the web page, please, and register. And let's talk about why we're here. We're here because you have the power to heal, okay? The first thing we advocate is healthy living. Before you get sick, before you develop some sort of autoimmune condition, because once you've developed this autoimmune condition, it's very hard to stuff it back in the box and undo the damage that's done. So interesting thing is, we're developing all these better diagnostic tools and better treatment tools. We're spending billions on finding new medicines and treatments for diabetes. There is a medicine a patient was on the other day. I'd never heard of it. It was a new diabetic medicine. There's about a dozen that have come out in the last 2 years. Problem is, we're making all these really beautiful, expensive medicines to treat a completely preventable disease. Diabetes, type 2 diabetes, is preventable. We can stop it from happening in the first place. We can stop the poisons from being in the grocery store, perhaps. So think about that every time you get offered a new medication to take. Somebody asked if they are allowed to rewatch the presentation. Absolutely, we will send you the link. It is being recorded. All right, so autoimmune facts. I hate to give you the facts, but the facts are not very good. But in the window in the hindsight, you can be this young lady who climbed the mountain and is looking out into the distance with her illness behind her. Number one cause of suffering with over 50 million diagnosed Americans with an autoimmune disease. It's one of the most expensive diseases to manage. In North America, we spend $100 billion a year managing autoimmunity. It's the number one cause of suffering, as we already talked about, and it dwarfs compared to heart disease and cancer and how much suffering, because it causes people to live with pain, dysfunction, insecurity for many decades. What we've done is really amazing as far as acute disease. Acute disease has gone down, 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 as you can see, all these infectious diseases, except for COVID, which is a whole new challenge to take on. But rheumatic fever, measles, hepatitis, tuberculosis, you can see as they plummet coming from the 1950s down into the 2000s. But at the same time, what happens? We have this huge rise in chronic diseases, multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, type 1 diabetes, asthma. Problem with autoimmune diseases is that it takes a long time for your symptoms to show up in a blood test, a lab test. If you do an MRI for multiple sclerosis, 60% of the sheathing on the nerves has to be gone before it even shows up on the MRI. So we're going to talk about why it's so important to catch things early and to start preventing them before they spike up. But these bounces in 200, 300% over the last 40, 50 years, and it's higher now. I didn't have data past 2000. This is also an interesting graph. And the pink or the red, however it looks for you, those are women, autoimmune diseases, and the blue are the men. And as you can see, autoimmune diseases affect women and men differently. and women at a much higher percentage overall, except for diabetes and for ulcerative colitis. And I think there's multiple reasons for this. I think the biggest one is our stress levels. Women, I think, tend to be under more stress or perceive themselves to be under more stress either way. They work outside the home. They have responsibilities in multiple different places. Lots of women don't know how to say no. So there's lots of reasons why women have more stress. I think we also have a different hormone balance, and the things in our environment that are affecting our hormones, from lotions and potions, hairsprays, makeup, and that combination of that with our internal environment of estrogen, progesterone, and the cycle that we go through, I think is why these diseases are higher in women. So let's look at how autoimmune diseases develop. We start down here in the healthy phase. We're all healthy. And then something happens, some trigger. Sometimes the trigger is a virus or an infection. Sometimes it's a pregnancy. Pregnancy is a huge trigger for autoimmune diseases. The biggest one, though, is really stress, some major stressor. When I go back and we go through the timeline of when my patients from birth till now, if we go back and build it, they can tell me right then, that's the spot where this started. And it's often the death of a family member, divorce, getting fired, having to move. Those are the biggest things that seem to be the trigger for what, in this yellow region, what brings us to the next phase, which is what we call the pre-symptomatic phase. Basically what that means is you don't really have any symptoms, but you're not quite right. Something's off. You don't feel the way you did before, and you don't know why. You go to the doctor maybe and you say, I'm just tired, I'm a little achy. And they're like, well, we do the basic blood work, do some tests, ultrasounds maybe, whatever they think is necessary. And they say, it's all normal. And at this point, it is all normal. Because like I said, with the MRI and MS, it takes a long time for those markers to become positive. And that positive phase doesn't really happen until this dynamic systems, this red area. So in the red area, this is where you start to notice that, you just can't do the things you did before. You don't feel well more days than you do. And you can't figure out the why. What's different today? I felt good yesterday, I don't feel good today. The biggest thing is when you're in this dynamic threshold, your doctor made you tests and they may say, oh, look, you have thyroid disease, you have hypothyroidism, that's why you feel bad all the time. Or they might do the test and the tests all come back normal. So you're in this in-between phase. You're not sick enough to be diagnosed as sick by the lab tests that are available, but you're also not well. And we want you well. We want to get you all the way back to the green. We can't undo the trigger that happened, but we want to get you to healthy. Because if you just get back to that orange phase where your symptoms go away, you're right on the edge. So the next thing, and there's always going to be the next thing, the car crashes, there's, a global pandemic, you can't leave your house for 4 months, things happen. So that thing is always going to be out there. And we want to get you into the green so we're not hanging in that middle range. Okay. Let's look here. 6 overlooked causes of autoimmunity. So this is kind of the heart of this. And we talked about stress. Is anybody here under stress? Anybody? Okay. I see a lot of yeses. That's good.
Yes.
Yes. Some people are under stress. And how we handle stress is important. And it is a huge difference of how we recover ourselves. So over time, our stress bucket gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And either we dump that bucket out and get the stress level back down, or it's going to overflow, or it's going to just blow up. And when that happens, we can't undo that blown up. We can't undo the mess on the floor. So who needs a vacation? Vacation from our vacation at home. I need one. Do you feel better when you go on vacation? How long does it take? Depends on how bad your stress level is. I think I don't even realize how stressed out I am until I get on vacation. And then when I'm there 4, 5, sometimes 6 days, I'm like, oh, wait, this is what normal feels like. This is how I should be feeling all the time. So if you feel better when you get back from vacation, it means that your baseline stress level is too high. So one of the things we work on is how do we get that stress level down to manageable or below manageable all the time. The second biggest trigger is leaky gut syndrome. So has everybody heard of leaky gut syndrome? No? I see a lot of yeses, a couple of no's. 5 years ago, almost nobody had heard of leaky gut syndrome. Basically, we're going to talk about what it means, but it means that your body is exposing your insides to outside things. We're seeing an immune system. Our immune system is getting to see things that we're putting into our body, and that's not how it should work. And there's a lot of causes for that. So we will go through that a little bit in detail in one of the cases that we look at. Chemical sensitivities and chemicals that are in our food, lots of pesticides, things that they're putting on the food to keep it fresh, the way it's packaged. Those are things that we should worry about. And then people are developing these food sensitivities. And some of you have probably had food sensitivity testing that says, oh, you're allergic to, or you're sensitive to eggs, or you're sensitive to wheat. You're mostly sensitive to all the things that you're already eating. And we're going to talk about why that is the way it is. Fourth is poor nutrition. And nutrition, people are eating fabulously for the most part. Most of my patients, they come in, they're on it. They know what to eat. They're eating their vegetables. They're eating lean proteins. They're not eating a lot of fat. They're not eating a lot of carbs. They're not going to McDonald's for breakfast. But they're not absorbing their nutrients as well as they should be. So you can be doing all of those things right and still have a poor nutrition status. And we don't want that to be the case. We want to fix that nutrition status. Other things, vaccinations and medications, all can be triggers for autoimmunity. And it's a combination of your underlying genetics and your underlying exposure in your environment. But the combinations seem to be what triggers people off. And the last and the biggest thing are stealth infections. So we don't know we have an infection, a stealth infection, unless we look. And in functional medicine, we do testing. We look in the stool most often, but sometimes we look for other things as well. But the stool gives us a lot of answers. You might have a silent infection of Helicobacter pylori, which is a bacteria that causes ulcers, also causes your food not to be absorbed properly. You could have a parasite, and your body's been fighting at this little guy for years and years and years. It doesn't really get rid of it, but it's not really making you sick, but it's increasing your inflammation. We see a lot of bacterial overgrowth. So bacteria that aren't necessarily bad, but there's bazillions more than there need to be. And that's putting a strain on your body because they're constantly trying to tamp that down. So when your immune system is overactive, it's destroying tissue too rapidly. So we work on shutting that off. But that's what modern medicine is doing. They're shutting off people's immune system with these medications. And we'll talk about that a little bit too. All right, so what do? We listen to you first. We spend a lot of time looking at and getting the whole picture. Our intake interview is 75 minutes long after we've already done this very long intake process on paper. We order the right tests. Everybody doesn't get the same tests. We don't do pan tests for everything. We look at what's going on with you, and we use everything that you've already know. We empower you to take action. This isn't about me. This isn't about what you can, it's all about what you can accomplish when you're given the right direction. We educate you, and we nurture you, and we provide a safe community. And the community is really what this is all about, trying to build this environment of people that really just want to get well. And we empower you to take better care of yourself, and in thus doing, you take better care of your family. Everybody gets lifted up when you start feeling good and getting healthy. So we're going to talk about the 6 pillars of health. And they're going to come across the bottom here. The first is energy production. The second is detoxification, brain health, and mindset, which go together and are different but super important. Diet and digestion, stress and inflammation, and lifestyle and environment. So these are the 6 pillars. Those 6 pillars all contribute to what is cellular health. So we have 60 trillion cells in our body, and all of those cells are doing their very best all the time. They are coordinated together to try to keep you well, and it takes a destruction or injury or problem in multiple cells in order to cause illness. So the next thing that after the cellular health comes the organ health. If the cells aren't healthy, the organs can't be healthy, and it contributes all to the whole. The final level is to get up to the system health, which is your GI system or your neurological system. All of the systems contribute to your total state of health. And we need to get all of them in line in order for you to feel really good. And we can't have a little view of this. We've got to really think of this systemically. You can't, this is why a lot of us have, a cardiologist and a pulmonologist and a gastroenterologist, and none of them ever talk to each other. And the one guy is doing this and the other guy is doing that, and they don't work together. But we are a system. You can't do one thing to one without the other. So let's look at a case study. That's how I'm going to go through and kind of talk about these different things and what the process is in functional medicine and why it's different than traditional allopathic or osteopathic medicine. This young lady's 50. As you can see, she has multiple health challenges. She's diabetic, she's hypothyroid, she's got a fatty liver, she's got high cholesterol, she's got psoriasis, and she's overweight. So that's a lot of what we would call comorbidities. We're hearing about that more and more in the news lately. So the funny thing is, all of these things that probably will shorten her life dramatically aren't why she came to see us. She came because she had psoriasis, and the psoriasis was causing these lesions on her arms and on her neck and on her back of her knees, and she couldn't wear shorts anymore, and she couldn't wear short sleeve shirts, and it bothered her so much that that's actually why she came in. She didn't come in for all those other things. So she had put on a lot of weight, 100 pounds or so over not that long, a year and a half, almost all around her midsection. When you see midsection weight in women particularly, it's almost always stress and inflammation. Stress and inflammation is what deposits that fat there. She had just come from a specialist to look at her psoriasis because she was so upset about these things. It's inhibiting her life. She went to see them, and they offered her a prescription for a medication that I won't name that was $2,500 a month to make her psoriasis go away and suppress her immune system. So $30,000 a year, that's a lot of money. And when she said, okay, well, but how long will I need to be on this? What do you think they said? Forever. Forever. The rest of your life. We're just going to suppress this forever. But you won't have your rash anymore. So she was willing to try other things than that to get well. So we went through her challenges. High-paced job, under a lot of personal stress. She had 2 parents that were kind of getting older. They were starting to have some difficulties. She felt a lot of pressure to take care of them. She had all the comorbidities we talked about. She'd put on a lot of weight, and she came in for us. So what do you think her biggest, and you feel free to unmute yourself if you have an idea, what pillars are we dealing with her? Remember all these pillars? We had the energy, detox, brain health, rest and digestion, stress hormones, healthy lifestyle. What are we dealing with her?
I'm going to go for detoxification and lifestyle.
Detoxification and, I'm sorry?
Lifestyle and environment.
lifestyle and environment. The detoxification is huge.
Probably all the rest of them too.
Seeing how they all go together, isn't it? Yes, all the rest of them too. And a big piece of it was kind of this, for her, the stress and the hormones and the inflammation. But the detoxification, she had fatty liver. When you have fatty liver, your liver cannot get rid of it. It can't process anymore. And we need our livers. Our livers, you know, if our liver's not working, we need to get a new one. Does anybody else have any suggestions or ideas? So
Tricia, I was just going to say inflammation, because a lot of what I've been reading, inflammation is a big source of these problems.
Absolutely. Inflammation is probably the source of these problems. I don't think it's a big source. I think it is the source. But where is the inflammation coming from? What is it that we're doing that's creating this inflammation?
I was looking at stress and diet.
Absolutely. Stress is huge and diet is huge, and all of those contribute to this inflammation. So in this lady, you know, she's kind of the easiest of my patients to fix, to be really honest, because she's got all of it. So we can start with little bits of everything, and a lot of times people get better really quickly when they have all of the pillars affected. So let's look at what we did with her. But let's look first at a little bit of what chronic stress does to us. So chronic stress causes you to feel tired in the morning even when you had enough sleep. So what's enough sleep? For some people it's 5 hours, 6 hours. For me it's 8.5. I really like my sleep. So how much is enough sleep? So they think they're getting enough sleep, but they wake up feeling tired every day. They also wake up in the middle of the night, usually 2 to 4 a.m. Sometimes that's stress related. Your brain's going, you can't get back to sleep. Sometimes you wake up because you gotta pee. Sometimes you wake up because your sugar's crashing. So there's lots of things that'll wake you up in that 2 to 4 a.m. range, all of which we can kind of get a handle on, but definitely related to chronic stress. Low libido and motivation, cravings for sugar and salt and fat. Who has those? Do you ever have sugar cravings? Feeling tired in the afternoon. You have this crash, 2 to 4 p.m. You're like, oh my gosh, is this day over yet? I just want to take a nap. So because we can't go take a nap, we all have some coffee or something else, some sugar, another pick-me-up to get through the afternoon. They get irritable when they skip meals. People that are under chronic stress don't have a good balance of energy throughout the day. And when they skip a meal, it gets in their head and they get grumpy. They have stubborn belly fat. They have fat around their bellies. No matter how much weight they lose, they go on the crash diet, their legs look great, their arms look good, and they've still got this tire around the middle. And they have a poor exercise response. So a lot of these people will go and they'll work out trying to, you know, take off that belly fat, and they won't lose it. They don't respond well to exercise. They have mental confusion and lack of focus, poor health, get sick often, don't recover quickly, don't bounce back. Stress can cause digestive dysfunctions, anxiety and depression, some dizziness when you stand up. That's actually pretty common. Feeling tired and wired, that kind of goes with the waking up at 2 a.m. thing too. And inability to handle stress, sensitive to sounds and light and pain. So these are really common things with people with chronic stress. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about our nervous system and how it works. And we have this nervous system, it's divided into 2 sections. You can see the diagram, we got the brain, and then on the left side, we have the fight or flight part, and on the right side, we have the rest and digest. So most of you have heard of this. This is called the autonomic nervous system, and it's really complicated and really simple at the same time. So we're going to keep it really simple. And let's talk about the left side first. The left side is the stress side. Remember, our body doesn't make mistakes. right? We've talked about this. The body does exactly what it's supposed to do with the information and the resources that it has. Our bodies have been around for thousands and thousands of years. So what happens if all of a sudden a tiger walked into your room? The room you're sitting in right now, your living room, your kitchen, as you're cutting your vegetables. What if a tiger walks in? What are you going to do? You would freak out because you think the tiger's going to come and eat me. But if you were a little kid, little 2-year-old maybe, you'd be like, "Aw, good cat." So different response, same situation. And why is that? Because we have been programmed, we have learned how to respond to things in our environment. If we have a near miss in a car accident, our heart beats, we shake, we get sweaty, right? Because we know what could have happened. If something scary, the tiger walks into our room, he might eat us. So that is kind of scary. So we control how our body responds to whatever the situation is. But that response is actually part of this, what we call the reptilian brain, which is instinctual. And it's the oldest part of our brain, billions of years, millions of years old. And it goes back and tells us, floods your body with hormones and says, get out, run away, okay? So what if the tiger walks in your room and he attacks you? How long would that last? 60 seconds? A couple of minutes? Not very long, right? Either you're going to get away or you're going to die. So it doesn't last very long. But what if your tiger came home with you, crawled into bed with you every night, got up with you in the morning, went to work with you every day? Because that's what's going on with our modern society. We can't tell the difference between the tiger and the mean landlord, or the overbearing boss, or the spouse who's not quite as kind as they should be, or supportive sometimes, or the newborn that won't stop screaming. Those things are all stressors that don't go away. We sleep with them. We keep them close to us. So we've created this high level of hormones flooding our body, stress, when it doesn't end in a minute. It doesn't go away. So we're carrying it with us all the time. Okay? So one thing I want you to remember is the same blood goes everywhere. Write that down. Same blood goes everywhere. So if your blood is healing and healthy and not full of stress hormones, then it's healing to everything. Your brain, your lungs, your liver, your kidneys. If your blood is destructive, it's destructive to everything. Your joints, your eyes, your eyebrows, your hair. So nothing happens in isolation. You know, our insurance companies would like us to think that. It makes paperwork really easy to check all the boxes. But that's not how it works. And it's really common sense. So let's look at the other side of the nervous system, the rest and digest side. So you can see how the nerves come down. There's this vagus nerve. It's called the wanderer, because he goes around from our midbrain, which is in the back of our head, both sides, all the way down, goes through all of our organs, and is responsible for the down, the turning it down, the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay? So back to our tiger. If the tiger's there, what's going to happen to your saliva? It's going to go down, right? I'm not digesting food while the tiger is eating us. He's digesting food, so his saliva might go up, but ours is going to go down. What happens to our heart rate? Heart rate goes up. What happens to our breathing? Breathing goes up. What happens to our blood flow to our digestive system? It goes down, right? I don't need to digest anything. I need the blood to go to my muscles, my heart, and get out the door. My brain is not thinking. So that's why people who have really bad stress, anxiety for testing are horrible test takers, because that shuts off the part of their brain, the big cortex part, this top green part, and turns on this back mammalian brain, and then you can't think. Okay? So is this a dumb response of our body or an intelligent response of our body? Hands up for dumb response. Hands up for intelligent response. This is an intelligent response, isn't it? It's keeping us alive. So when this is going on, are we going to build bones? We're going to increase our bones or decrease our bones? We're going to decrease our bones. We're going to increase our muscle. We're going to decrease our muscle. We're going to decrease our muscle. What happens when you lift weights? You're breaking down your muscle. The reason your muscles get bigger is that when you recover, the muscles put more mass on. So, but when we're actually working out, we're breaking down the muscles. So what happens to your immune system in this overstimulated, tiger's coming to get me state? Does it go up? Does it go down? It goes down. I don't need any white blood cells to save me from the tiger. That's not what I need. So when you live in that chronic state of stress with the tiger sleeping with you and going to work with you, your immune system goes down naturally, okay? And we don't want that to happen. So one of the interesting things I see in my practice a lot is people who are trying to get pregnant or who are planning to get pregnant, and they have done in vitro, they've done other things, and they really are like, they've been desperate and they tried everything, and then they quit because it's been too expensive, it's been too long, they just can't handle the pressure anymore. And what happens? They get pregnant, or they decide to adopt. God, how many adopted kids do you know that have a 9-month-old brother or sister, 9-month old, younger than them, brother or sister? All of them, because the pressure's now off. So our immune system is so smart. Our nervous system is so smart. You don't take a stressed out person and say, hey, why don't you have a baby? Like, that's just what you need, right? That's not the best thing that can happen. So we're looking at stress and why that changes everything for all these people. So let's look at her a little bit further. So we did some blood work. And actually, this is a urine panel. It's called an organic acid panel. I do this on most patients, especially women. It has a lot of hormone information in it. And it also looks at how we metabolize everything. So when you look here in this top left, there's red. There's actually a lot of red on this patient, but the top left red means she's not very good at metabolizing fat. So it makes it really difficult to lose weight if you can't metabolize fat. The more weight we have, the more insulin resistant we become, the more inflamed we become, because fat is inflammation in and of itself. So we need to unwind all of the fat and the metabolism. Because basically she's rich. She's got lots of fat and it's just sitting there. It's money that's locked in a savings account that she can't get out. The other thing we see on her lab tests all in this lower section are how her mitochondria works. Your mitochondria are actually organelles is what we call them now. They started actually as parasites, and they live inside all of our cells except our red blood cells, and they are our powerhouse cells. They make us energy. So hers aren't working very well. She has all this dysfunction in her mitochondria. So we looked at different ways to fix that. And for her, first thing we had to do was kind of bump up her metabolism. So we did that with diet. We put her on an autoimmune paleo diet. Basically, that means gluten-free and dairy-free. Those are the two biggest pieces of it. We gave her some supplementation that would increase what's something called glutathione, which increases how your body makes that energy and increases its cycle of energy. She did really, really well. Are any of you out there gluten-free? Anybody gluten-free? No? Okay. Of you that are gluten-free, have you been gluten-free and then you went backwards and got off the gluten, started eating gluten again? Did you feel better or did you feel worse? Or did you not notice?
I was worse, Tricia, and then I noticed a big change in my health when I went back to gluten-free.
Big change, positive or negative?
A little of both. I don't know if it was coincidence, but that's when it was after that I was diagnosed with the Hashimotos, and then I noticed the weight gain. Mm-hmm. So don't know if it was a trigger or not. I'm really not sure. But for Sophie, we were gluten-free for a long time, and then we didn't think we were going to make the progress with her that we were hoping to see. So at that point, I had not been diagnosed with the Hashimotos, so I really wasn't sure if it was connected to that or not.
Well, interesting, but definitely an autoimmune condition and autoimmune trigger. And it would be interesting to look at the stool. And we're going to look at the next patient I think I have in here. We're going to look at those inflammatory markers and how we can actually measure if it's causing a problem for you or not. So I think this slide does show us that. So sorry, my screen is not working properly. One moment, let's go back. Let's go backwards. Go backwards. Can't go backwards. One moment, please. This is the one I want. So here is her stool study, and what she'll notice is, so she was very high in this lifetime, which is inflammatory bowel syndrome marker, and she had some dysbiotic flora in her GI tract. So she had some bad bacteria that were in her colon. So we worked on that as well. We gave her some probiotics. We decreased some of the overgrowth of bacteria because she, in that yellow section, she had an overgrowth in what are called commensals. So they're not bad bacteria, but when you have too many of them, they increase your inflammation. So this is what happened. This is her. We went from April to August. She went from 215 to 145, 70 pounds. And she wasn't ever focused on the weight. She was only focused on her health and her wellness. And what happens is that her liver disease, her fatty liver on ultrasound was gone. Her diabetes went away. Her hemoglobin A1C went down to 5.6. Her thyroid issues stabilized, so she was no longer having swings of her thyroid hormones, and her psoriasis went away. And that was all in 90 days. So her health improved, she felt good, she looks great, and she wasn't dependent on anybody else to keep her healthy, and she wasn't dependent on some really expensive drug every month for the rest of her life to keep these inflammatory processes down. It would have been interesting to see, that experiment, what would have happened had she gone on the medication. I think she probably would have just gotten sicker. I think. So does anybody have any questions that they, at this point about this case? Or we can talk about the next case. All right, let's talk about the next case. This case study is a young lady with rheumatoid arthritis. So rheumatoid arthritis is pretty common autoimmune disease. She's very young. She's 43. And she is really crippled by joint pain to the point where she's stopped doing her exercise. She's stopped doing most of her daily activities. And, when we started doing her history, she told me that she has had GI issues for years and years and years and years, ever since she was a little kid. She has a relatively high stress level at work. She definitely noticed that certain foods make her stomach worse. And she's been diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome by her primary care doctor. You probably heard that before, irritable bowel syndrome. Basically, I call it irritable BS syndrome. It's your stomach hurts all the time and nobody knows why. It can be with diarrhea or constipation, but you're just miserable and you eat different foods and it doesn't matter what you eat, you feel bad all the time. So she said her doctors gave her that diagnosis, but they didn't tell her what to do to fix it. So she was walking around not knowing what to do. She had 2 GI scopes from below. So she had 2 colonoscopies and she had an endoscopy. So when your doctor does a scope on you because you have bowel problems, what are they looking for? They're looking for cancer. They're looking for diverticulitis. They might be looking for a polyp if you're having bleeding. They're looking for ulcers in your stomach. They're looking for some sort of obstruction, but they're not looking for function. You can't tell any function from having a colonoscopy done. So what we do is we look for function. We look at the stool to see what's going on actually in the gut. Another thing we found in her history that she reported is that she had spent a lot of time in Europe, and she was actually born there. And when she would go back home, she would not have the same problems. So all of her GI stuff especially would go away. So to me, that just points to gluten. And so we looked at that for her. What pillars do we think are going on with this lady? Back to the pillars. So I'm thinking inflammation because of all the joint pain. Obviously digestion and diet. Her belly's not right. Those are the biggest thing that she complained about. But I'm also concerned about detoxification and oxidative stress with her. That also is a big leader to inflammation. So we did look at some studies for her. We looked at her stool study. And she had this opportunistic bacteria called Citrobacter. Even says right on the form, things that can cause potential autoimmune triggers. So we see Klebsiella a lot. I see Proteus a lot, and I see this Citrobacter, and tons of people have them. So these are very inflammatory bacteria. Remember, the bacteria live in our colon. They're supposed to be there. Some of them, not so much. Some of them we want a lot of, but they get the first taste of all our food. So when we have an overgrowth of the bacteria that are not the best bacteria to have, then that causes bloating, that causes gas, it causes inflammation. And so for her, this was a huge driver to this autoimmune thing. She also had Candida. Candida is yeast. So women know yeast infections is the same concept, but we should have 0 yeast in our colon on a regular basis. And even if you eat a ton of yeasty food or yeasty beer, you drink a lot of Weizenbach, it doesn't give you yeast in your colon. So that's something that we got to take care of. We don't want that there. And then this secretary SIGA is called secretary IgAs, and that is actually your immune system. Your GI tract is your biggest immune system in your whole body. Everything that comes in from your nose, your mouth, all the way down is exposed to this secretary IgA. And what it is, it's part of the mucus layer, and it identifies and sucks in and encapsulates things that we don't want. So bacteria, infectious processes, foreign bodies. So when this is low, your immune system isn't working right. And it's not working right from the get-go. And I see it in patients like this, either way too high or way too low. And they're both a problem because it's not working in the range where the immune system's doing the right thing. It's either way overreactive or way under-responsive. And neither of those are a good thing. We want it kind of right in that middle range. She also had anti-gliadin, secretary IgA. Anti-gliadin is for the gluten. So when you have this anti-gliadin, it means your body's reacting to gluten. And as you can see, hers was about double the high range of normal. I like to see it down in the 2 range. And people that are on gluten-free diets, when we check this, it should be negative. If you've really been on a gluten-free diet, even if you're sensitive to gluten, or even if you have celiac, this should be 0. And I see people all the time that are on a gluten-free diet and they think they're doing it perfect, and they're still up there. So there are a lot of hidden sources of gluten. So if you're going to do it, we want to make sure that you're doing it right. Okay? The other thing is she complained of a ton of gas and bloating, and it was really out of proportion, and it was kind of right after she ate. So we did another special test looking for something called SIBO. SIBO is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and basically it means that the small intestines, so we go from the stomach to the small intestines, 22 feet of small intestines before we hit the colon. And in SIBO, it means that the bacteria that should be in the colon have come up into that small intestine. And the bacteria aren't necessarily bad bacteria, they're just not in the right place. And our small intestine is where most of our nutrition gets absorbed. So the people that have SIBO, one, have a lot of discomfort, especially right after they eat. Doesn't really matter what they eat. They tried everything, and nothing really makes them better. And those bacteria release gas, which is how we measure this. So we do the SIBO test through a breath test. You drink this carbohydrate solution. It's got some sort of lactose in it, and it causes, it's a sugar. So the bugs eat the sugar, and when they do, they release gas. So they release hydrogen and methane. And there's two different kinds of SIBO, so you can have one without the other. If you have them both, it's worse. Methane's harder to get rid of. And hers went from, well, it should have been way down here in the beginning. It should have been like 10 or lower at the start of the test, and it was already elevated. And then she went all the way up to like 127. So that was a big thing that we had to get on track with her. So all of this inflammation in the gut causes something called leaky gut. So let's talk about this, because I saw some head shaking that they haven't ever heard of this before. Some of you guys might know about it. I hope I don't bore you if you do. If you do, just write it in the chat that I'm boring you. But basically, our GI tract should be like a garden hose. It goes from the mouth all the way to the anus, and it should be pretty solid. We don't want leaks in the hose where things get out. The way our food gets absorbed is actually through channels. So there are channels in the wall of this tube that pull in the good stuff and keep out the bad stuff. So if we need potassium, it pulls in the potassium. If we need proteins, it pulls in the proteins. But it shouldn't be pulling in other things. Your body shouldn't know that you had celery. It shouldn't know that you had pork chops. It shouldn't know any of that. It should just know, ooh, there's some good protein, I should have that. It should know the ingredients of the food, not the food itself. So what happens is in these channels that you can see all these blue and red lines, sometimes those channels get blown open, and then those things that we're eating get shown to our bloodstream, which is right on the other side. And the bloodstream goes, uh-oh, pork chop's not supposed to be here, so let me go attack the pork chop, which causes more inflammation. So it's an immune response to the food that you're eating. So in this next slide, you can see the left side is what the villi, this intestinal growth should look like. It should look like a shag carpet, lots of involutions, very thick, and that's all covered with, I call it slime, but it's really mucus to keep all the good stuff in and not let it get out to your system. So when you have leaky gut and you've had this chronic inflammation for a long time, the right side is actually what it looks like under the electron microscope. You see some of these big kind of lumpy looking fingers sticking off, and then these big scoopy holes. All of that is not providing that protective layer. And if we don't fix that protective layer, then you don't get better. So lots of people go have food sensitivity testing done, and they'll come back and be like, I'm allergic to plums, and I'm allergic to spinach, and I'm allergic to Brussels sprouts. I'm like, yeah, those are all 3 different families, and they're all pretty good foods for you, so you're probably not really allergic to them. Have you been eating them a lot? And they'll be like, oh yeah, I've been eating those often. The reason they come up on the food sensitivity test is because those holes are there. And the immune system is seeing the plum and the spinach and the Brussels sprouts. Doesn't necessarily mean they shouldn't have them. So if we stop all those foods, which a lot of people do, and they don't treat the villi, they don't treat this leaky gut and make it all smooth and deep and lots of slimy mucus again, then it doesn't matter what you eat. You're going to switch to a different diet and you'll get sensitive to those foods. And then you can probably go back to the ones you weren't eating because your body's forgotten about them. So you can go back to the spinach and the plums for a while, but then you'll get sensitive to those too. So the food sensitivity testing can be beneficial, but it isn't the answer. So if you don't fix the underlying gut problem, then you can't get you'll always find a new sensitivity, okay? So I'm sure there's a lot more questions, and we can always go into it in more detail. I can do a whole talk just on leaky gut if you want. So the food isn't really the problem. If you go online, you go to PubMed, which is where all of the documentation, all of the research is done, and you start searching leaky gut or SIBO, all of those will come up. And what you find is that they're very highly associated with autoimmunity, Parkinson's disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and cancers and infertility. So definitely an issue that we want to be working on for people. And if you have food sensitivities or your gut's just not right, there's something happening there, and we can look into what that is. Let me take a breath and have a little sip of tea. So we're looking here at the incidence of celiac disease, celiac incidence, and glyphosate. So glyphosate is it's Roundup. It is a toxin that is put on our food. And there's been a lot of talk about how it's used on wheat products, and this is why people are getting, wheat intolerance. And some of that's true, and some of that's not true. Only about 30% of the wheat in the United States has glyphosate applied after it's grown. The reason they do that is because it causes the plant to desiccate, so the stems become dry, but it pulls more moisture up into the wheat and makes the wheat bigger and heavier. But almost 100% of the fields where wheat is grown, Roundup is applied before the wheat is grown. So even if it's not put on after, it is put on before. So it may be something that you want to look out for. Some people are very sensitive to it, and we can actually test for it. So the incidence of these immune GI things going on and the level of glyphosate use seem to be tracking together. So we're keeping an eye on that. So what do we do for Alex? We put her on the autoimmune paleo diet. So gluten-free, dairy-free, in her case, nut-free too. We used an herbal protocol that addressed her infections, and she did really well with that. We actually put her on antibiotics for the Helicobacter pylori that she also had. We wanted that to be gone. That causes ulcers. So we actually use antibiotics, Flagyl and things that you've heard of before. We gave her huge doses of essential fats, and we used curcumin to help reduce her inflammation and encouraged her to stay active. She did amazing. She was up playing with her family, going out, doing things, took a hike, didn't feel sore the next day. And within a couple of months, things really had turned around for her. We repeated her testing, and this lipopolysaccharide, which is part of that inflammatory gut process, as you can see on the second test. The top test is the first one, the bottom one's the second one, was completely gone. Let's see what else we got here. Same testing for her. We actually looked here. This is her carbohydrates. So this is her again, another way of looking at energy that she wasn't using well. So we worked on that. And this is her neurotransmitters. And as you can see, these bottom two were really out of whack. So we worked on building those back up as well. Her anti-gliadin, which was we talked about that in the other patient, was very elevated. That's the gluten sensitivity. And her hormones as well. So she had very high estrogen levels. Estrogen acts as a direct inhibitor of thyroid hormone. So your thyroid won't work right if your estrogen levels are too high. And fat makes your estrogen levels go up. Stress makes your estrogen levels go up. Obviously, if you're trying to make babies, your estrogen level goes up. So let me skip ahead here just a little bit because I don't want to go through another case study because I think we're running a little bit over and getting a little bit out of time. So what can you do to start to feel better? lots of things we've kind of talked about today. Working on healthy food choices, working on getting outdoors, doing some exercise, even if it's a strain for you. Moving is very, very important. Defining your goals, figuring out where your support system is, and finding, that balance in your life, really being in touch with relationships. We found that that's a huge challenge for most people, and it's all changed with having to be a bit more isolated.